evening to one and all. What matters most? We asked you that question in a survey carried out earlier this year. We asked you, what are the most important current issues that matter to you and your constituency? Well, you told us health and its treatment first, then care for the elderly, recycling, preservation of heritage. Then you said climate change. So we decided to explore these matters further in a quartet of programmes broadcast live on our Facebook page. I am John Moss, and this evening, a subject that concerns the health, your primary concern, but of the globe itself. I'm going to explore climate change with Joni Farragher, Manx Labour Party's Green Issues Coordinator and co-founder of the Isle of Man Climate Change Coalition, with Mike Rose, whose expertise lies in recycling, head of the Western Civic Amenity Site, Graham Makepeace-Warne of Manx Wildlife Trust. He took part in climate protests at Tynwald, and someone who is more likely than all of us to feel the influence, I suppose, in years to come of climate change, Archie Elliott, a student and part of the Student Climate Network. The term climate change was first used, as far as we know, in 1975 by Wallace Brooker at the Lamont Doherty Earth Laboratory, who asked, climate change, are we on the brink of a pronounced global warming? That's the first time, as far as we know, down in print, that phrase appeared. Well, that was the question asked over 40 years ago. The next question is, if yes, why? Is it a natural cycle? We do have evidence of extreme conditions over the centuries. Volcanic explosions have altered the globe's climate temporarily by throwing masses of dust into the atmosphere. Around about 535 AD, apparently there was an enormous explosion, 2,000 million Hiroshima-sized bombs. That was the equivalent, and it caused human civilization from Mongolia to Constantinople to be affected, precipitating, we're told, plague, famine, death, and great migration. Other eruptions, such as Krakatoa, dropped the global temperature and hit crop production, and Mount Pinatubo, as recently as 1991, cooled the global climate. Solar activity also influences the weather we experience. That was then. Now we have 7 billion people on this earth, and for over 100 years, the industrial age, we've put into the atmosphere the narrow band that encircles the earth, the troposphere bordered by the tropopause, a great deal of carbon dioxide every year. Apparently, we put in 30 billion metric tons of the stuff. That's more than 4 metric tons for each of us. In a recent essay in the BBC Radio 4 series on the Jeremy Vine Show, entitled What Makes Us Human, the author Michael Morpurgo, his most famous work is Warhorse, said, and I quote, "When we lived close to nature as we once did, when we felt more connected to the world, we knew instinctively that nature needed to be nurtured, respected, known, and understood. But our ingenuity as a species, our ability to use language and think and discover, gave us a supremacy where we imagined we were the gifted species. Homo sapiens, God's chosen. It was our world. Hubris grew in us like a cancer, became a madness. Now we no longer took what we needed from this earth. We took what we wanted." Well, the world has been this world, namely a globe, for about 4.5 billion years. Humans have been humans for about 200,000 years. We've had periods where the weather became extreme. My point is, we've had these periods. We, the human race, have come through it. So is this just another hiccup? Is this something we should regard as a meteorological analogy? Well, let's go first of all to Graham and ask him, are we all certain that this is definite change happening to our climate?
Well, I personally would want to look to the science to answer that question. Science we can believe in. We know they check their results. They do it thoroughly. Scientists constantly question what they're doing. They have different hypotheses and they want to make sure that they prove those hypotheses. So, yes, if you look at the science, there are definitely changes to the world's climate.
So you're quite happy with that we need to prepare, we need to take measures?
Absolutely, yeah, with 100%.
Let's go to the representative, Joni Farragher, for the Manx Labour Party. Do you feel the same way? Are you absolutely certain this is happening?
Absolutely, and I would echo what Graham said, that we need to look to the science. We trust scientists on every other issue. For some bizarre reason, when it comes to climate change, we seem to feel that we can somehow question experts in this field. The experts are telling us that we have changed the climate to such an extent that we've actually entered a new age, the age of humans.
But if we had been around when we had the last ice age or something, and we'd been the sort of people we are now, would we have been running around then saying, oh, it's climate change, this is never going to be the same again? Is that the possibility?
I don't think so. The signs of climate change, as listed by NASA, do include an all-time high of the greenhouse gas carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, an all-time high in human history. So that's what's driving human-induced climate change.
Mike Rose, you're very much involved in recycling.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems that I see is consumerism. We consume more and more.
Just explain that. What do you mean by that?
It's a throwaway society. So at one time when we were children, we probably got something that needed to last us a long time. Nowadays, the kids get something and they throw it away. You get a new one.
But do we all do that? I've read somewhere that we wear our clothes for an average 5 weeks before we get rid of them.
That's right. We tried to get involved with a 12-month T-shirt challenge last year, where you had to keep a piece of clothing for 12 months because people don't keep it that long.
That was difficult.
And it does.
I managed it because I don't throw my stuff away.
Is that consciously, or you just like the stuff?
I just like the stuff. Yeah, my wife tells me off all the time.
Sorry, Johnny.
I was just going to say that goes back to your quote from Michael Mapugo earlier on, that we don't take what we need anymore, we take what we want. And that is exactly what consumerism is, obviously, is that we're not only are we overusing and we're not recycling, we're not mending, we're not repairing, but also we are actually being actively led to believe that people who advocate that sort of lifestyle are kind of loonies and crazies or hippies, and that's a bad thing.
And the people who win on that one is the corporations that make the stuff.
Absolutely.
Advertising with young people in particular. Archie Elliott, do you feel tempted to actually dive into this consumerism?
Well, I do like to stay out of the consumerism, and I rarely would go out and say, "Oh, I fancy buying some new clothes." I find clothes shopping a bit boring, actually. But the problem I find is, well, the adverts tell you, "Oh, it's only £1, it's on sale," and they almost lead you into saying, "Oh, I must have that." So if you walk into a shop, you see something for £1, you think, "Oh, that's a bargain. I've got to have that £1 T-shirt because it's £1." But whether you actually need it or not, it's a totally different matter. And if you just look at that £1 T-shirt, the costs to produce it are minuscule. The company obviously is still making profit from producing that £1 T-shirt, and then the cost to the environment is detrimental.
I suppose the argument is that is giving employment to people in another third world country. People who make these T-shirts basically earn a living, and they would perhaps starve without this employment.
Well, I think
without you buying your £1 T-shirt.
The standard of living they're receiving, because they're only making a £1 T-shirt, is very low, and I think we need to be moving more to a fair trade and ethical source of clothes. So the farmers, which maybe grow the cotton, they get a good price for their cotton, and then the workers who actually make them into clothes, they receive a good price, and then yes, the price of the clothing might go up slightly more, but that pays for a better standard of living.
It's the problem with living in the world that we live in, that we take decisions that immediately reflect on other people in other parts of the world, because we intercommunicate all over the world, and decisions we take sort of reflect all over the world. That is a problem, isn't it? You can't take a single decision as you might have been able to 400 years ago or 500 years ago. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. I think that what Archie was talking about there was really interesting, because what we're looking at really is that what we value things on is their monetary value as opposed to their value in terms of our world. And that's what we seem to have moved away from, looking at the value of something in terms of how much it costs our world.
We have to move away from countries measuring themselves on GDP, on their ability to grow their monetary value. There's companies now, we've had for a while companies that are not for profit. You get companies now that are not for growth, so they feel they're the right size to deliver the service that they do. They don't want to get any bigger.
Do these companies have shareholders, though?
No, and that's the difference.
Yeah, because the shareholders want growth, don't
yes,
they?
Exactly.
They want profit.
Yeah.
So how do you get over that?
We don't have shareholders. You move away from that model.
You're nodding your head there, Johnny.
Yeah, I mean, this is...
But is it possible? Is it practical in this modern world? I mean,
not
business drives
in
itself usually through shareholders.
Okay, so this is the system that we've created. So what we need to do is address that system, and we need to realign that system in line with our planetary goals. Essentially, we do need systemic change.
You only have to look at the general election in the UK at the moment to see how much money is controlling what we see and controlling our decision making. So no change is going to happen with the current system unless we break it.
But that comes presumably from the government, because governments like to see growth in the country. In this island, we're told that we need expansion, we need people coming in so that growth is experienced. you can't just come to a halt, otherwise a country comes to a halt. Well, that's what the government would actually argue, isn't it?
Well, you're saying government, but what I'm saying is that there's another level beyond that. The government is effectively being controlled by the money. As I say, if you look at the general election in the UK and the media and who owns that media and the things that we're told to believe and how untrue a lot of that is, it's all being controlled by the money. So it's about breaking that system so that they don't control government.
Well, we had Kyoto, obviously. We had Paris Agreement. We've got a whole lot of people. It differs on how many people. I think 25 to 29,000 is being cited at the moment, meeting in Madrid for this COP25 gathering. What do you think that will achieve, Mike?
I don't think it'll achieve anything, to be honest. What did the last one achieve?
Well, it's
Well,
certainly
the last one
USA
achieved,
Well, we
pulled
tend to
out
have these
Well,
agreements.
yeah,
of
they-
the climate agreement.
but they
and
actually achieved like the biggest monumental step in actually starting. That Paris
right.
Agreement set out the 2050 target. It then started the way to be able to then move to a carbon neutral
yeah, but unless
future.
they all agree,
They did in Paris. They did agree to that monumental target.
except
And
the
yes,
USA. The USA pulled
The,
out.
the USA agreed then, and they still haven't pulled out. They haven't pulled out until the day after Trump, if he gets re-elected, then becomes stays as president. But they haven't yet pulled out.
But they've made the point
Yeah.
that they do not regard that agreement
Well, I
as
think
important enough to actually
that-
justify them staying in it if it suits their purposes.
That's the one president. The thing is that president then can make the decision for the entire country. There's lots of companies within the US which have decided, no, we're still going to follow the Paris regulations. We're still going to cut our carbon emissions without the government. The government
some of the
can't
individuals-
control. They can't make. Yeah, they
Some
can't
of the
make
individual
companies,
states are doing the same
yeah.
thing. They're doing their own thing. We all have to do our own thing.
Well, what about the island? I mean, here we are, a small island in the Irish Sea. Even if it's painful, should we start doing things which we feel are correct?
Yes.
Like what?
Increase recycling, reduce consumerism. We need to be able to repair things that we used to repair.
Isn't recycling up to the people in the street or the people at their homes? They've got to want to do it.
It
I mean,
is,
how
and-
much
and-
recycling do we do at the moment? In general
A
terms.
total. The Western Intermediate site does approximately 70% a year, from about 3,500 tons of waste.
You've got to have the infrastructure there to do it.
You've got to have the
I
infrastructure.
would say what Mike does at the Western Amenity Site is fantastic, and I'm hoping that you work with other amenity sites to show them best practice. He's doing a fantastic job there. But you've only got to look across what is a relatively small island, and there's different recycling schemes in amongst each of the commissioners, and that makes it complicated for people.
Yeah,
You've
there's
got
only
to give
curbside
them,
in 3 areas, I think. Maybe
Yeah.
2 areas now. I think Maloo's going to stop doing theirs, aren't they?
and even the amenity sites.
Why are Maloo stopping doing theirs?
I think it's the cost.
And that is the thing, isn't it? The cost. I mean,
It is.
presumably it's a fairly complicated operation to
It is
recycle.
complicated, and it also depends on the commodity prices. Recently, the cardboard market has dropped to record lows, and it's going to drop again. So that means that the recycling cardboard that we ship to the UK actually costs us more money. We can't get it for zero.
Am I right in saying that if someone thoughtlessly puts something in a recycling container that it shouldn't be in, that it can wreck the
Yes.
entire consignment?
Contamination is a big issue.
So
Yes.
what can you do about that? You can't go through
education.
everything.
Education.
So what do you do if you get a container full of stuff and you think there's something in there or you see something?
We spend a lot of time taking things out of containers to put them in the right container and telling people off, which people get upset with us about. But we need to tell them off. We need to educate them.
When they turn up, do you say, "Can we go through? Just have a look at what you're doing"?
Yes, because people don't realise that amenity sites aren't entitled to take. We're not licensed to take food waste. So people bring a big bin bag in from home. What's in the bag? We open it up. Sorry, food waste. You have to take it away.
So food waste can go in its own container at the person's home and become...
Yes, in your domestic bin.
Yeah, but how do we know how many people actually are bothered to do that? Because on a cold, wet winter's night, a lot of people wouldn't want to go outside and actually find their...
They
compost
don't.
bin.
No, they don't. I'm afraid. And we have a lot of arguments with people about it. But people are learning. They are learning. I've been there 10 years, and they're getting there.
Archie, do your colleagues at school, your school, talk about things like this? I presume not, do they? It's not the sort of thing that's...
Well, we are encouraged to recycle, and it's always been something to bring in to recycle.
How are you
but-
encouraged?
Well, it's almost something we're almost taught. It's always, oh, you have this you recycle it. It's almost, that's like plastic bottle. Or not necessarily plastic bottle, but like cans or paper. It's natural to then think, oh, we should recycle it. It's something which is brought in, But I think we need more education for obviously other stuff we can do as regards to climate, because we aren't taught at school how to be more environmentally friendly. We're only in biology touched on the bare basics of the greenhouse effect.
So what would you like to see it?
So I think I'd like to see kind of climate education initiated within almost our PFC. I think I can't remember the name for it. We call it life skills.
Right. I think generally it's known as life skills,
Yeah.
isn't it? But that should be a natural part, as you come through school, you
Yeah.
automatically feel this is what I should be doing with my waste.
Yeah, and then I think it's almost, especially if you introduce this climate education, it starts in primary school, but if you get them from a young age into kind of good habits within being more environmentally friendly, it then carries on, and you can't. It's much harder to change bad habits. And I think we want to see education about what climate change is, the impacts of climate change, what we can do about it, and it's not just saying it's all negative. We're all going to, there's going to be mass flooding, mass extinction. It's making a positive effect. It's saying what we can do to solve the problem.
Just north of Delhi, I think there's a mountain of waste, isn't there? It's about 65 metres high and is now an aircraft hazard or something. You sometimes feel if people were taking a look at that, they would understand what a big
I
problem
think
is.
Greece has got a big issue with waste as well, haven't they?
Yeah, there's a danger that you take something like recycling and you use that as an excuse to be able to carry on consuming. It really goes back to what Mike was saying before, that refusing the item is best. So it goes refuse, reuse, recycle. Recycle is really a last resort. What we would prefer, vegware cups, the recyclable bottles that
People do
the
bring their own
creamery
bags in
use.
these days, don't they?
Yes, yeah. Well,
I mean, that's something
they're supposed
that's-
to, but the reusable bags are actually they're now using more plastic because people are still just paying and buying more plastic bags. We all have to have change our mindset about how we shop. Taking a reusable, I always take
Even the Hessian bags have got a plastic liner.
well, yes, and
Sometimes.
cotton bags have a much larger carbon footprint than a plastic carrier bag. You have to use them maybe 300 times before they cover off their carbon
There's
footprint.
a lot of areas we have to reinvent. Can I just go on to turbines, etc.? We can look out of our window now and see turbines on the horizon. As far as wind power is concerned, how valuable is it? Because I've read a statistic that was put out. Matt Ridley, I was reading an article by him. He's saying it's less than 1% is actually going down to wind power at the moment. So how valuable is it?
It's valuable, but how do we make the wind turbines? What materials do we make them out of?
Well, so Mongolia, there's some sort
how-
of metal you get from Mongolia where they dig it out, and it's part of the magnets, isn't it?
Yeah. How do we recycle them? How do you maintain them? You need a constant wind. So
Because you get intermittence, don't you? Where if the wind drops, I mean, if you had the whole of the UK relying on wind power and the wind dropped,
well,
there'd be no
we
power
use
coming
we
in.
use a small turbine at the site to teach the children about
This is the
alternative energy.
waste site, yeah.
Yeah, because we've got the education trailer now, so we have solar panels and we have a small wind turbine. At Kirkmichael School the other week, it wasn't windy enough for it to turn, and that starts at 10 meters a second. So
But it is useful. I mean, shouldn't houses be built automatically with a small wind turbine and perhaps with solar panels?
solar panels, yeah, I agree. Solar panels, wind turbines. I'm not sure.
From
It's
a
the
wildlife
style
point
and
of
the
view, you really
size
need to
and-
look at the impact. Wind turbines can be quite damaging to birds, for example, whereas, as you say, solar panels would be perfectly safe. I think the more important thing in terms of house building would be making it more efficient so that it's got a lower carbon footprint in the first place, less heat loss, that sort of thing.
And can we do away
more,
with
more
things...
thermal dynamic and
Yeah.
water collection, water reuse, what they call grey water reuse tanks. They're available now. You can buy them off the shelf.
We obviously are looking to get energy from various places, but do we use too much energy? Should we be, if you get cold at home, put on an extra jumper. Well, don't use a spin dryer.
We used to do as children, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
but
and I mean,
this
I
is
think
what
that's
we
what
accept,
Graham-
we presume is normal life these days, isn't it?
That's largely as well what goes back to what Graham was saying about reducing our carbon footprint by insulating our homes as well and making sure that our living spaces and working spaces are actually energy efficient in the first instance rather than having them just leak out heat. So if we go back to that as a basic, insulating our homes, insulating our workplaces and our public buildings so that we don't have to heat them
But
as
is
much.
insulation healthy? Shouldn't you have a good draft to your house and it keeps you healthy out of the west?
You
Well,
need,
I think
airflow. You need airflow. You
It
need
is,
airflow.
yeah. It's
Otherwise,
still
you
moving
get
to
damp
passive
and rot.
house. So you
But
still
if you-
have
Yeah, passive house,
yeah.
that's one of the principles is airflow anyway, so it's built into it even though it's well insulated and highly energy efficient.
Are these things we're going to have to step back from if we're going to start cutting back on things and saving energy?
Well, our grandparents, great-grandparents didn't have central heating, and
No, but they unfortunately did use coal fires. So we have come back to more of an era. So you have like air source heat pumps. They go on the side of your home. They're quite small as such. And then if you have they have a low flow rate, so they're not maybe the best if you have very poor insulation. But if you insulate your home well enough, that then will heat your home, and then it's free heat.
Can I just move on, because we're coming to the end of the programme already?
Yes.
Just mention that Culture Vannon have got a production called Man's Green Footsteps. Sarah Mercer, the graduate from Durham, has brought out this project, a series of projects working in collaboration with communities around the Isle of Man, culminating in a mini festival and premiere of the short film in August. The film will follow the environmental journey of the Isle of Man over the next year. Graham, if I could just go to you, as far as creatures are concerned, animals are basically heading to the warmer waters, aren't they? We're getting animals changing their location, etc.
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't that just nature working itself? Should we be concerned about that?
Well, nature will always look for a balance, but whereas you say obviously, sea creatures may well be able to move to warmer waters, that's okay for them. If you were a ptarmigan in northern Scotland and you need cold climates, you've got nowhere to go. So you're just going to die out as a result of climate change. And it's not just changes in temperature that you have to worry about. Sea temperatures rising means the sea becomes more acidic, and we know that's going to cause issue. We've already seen bleaching of corals. It's going to cause a lot of issues for a lot of other species as well. But I don't want to give the impression that I'm talking about climate change because we need to do it to save wildlife. I think Mark Cocker, the author, makes a really good point that we don't need to give nature a home. Nature is our home, and we need to do it to save the whole of biodiversity, to save our own ecosystem, the very thing that's keeping us as a species alive.
Just quickly, everyone, can we find an answer to this? As an island and as a world, do you think? Are you optimistic?
if we all work together.
We still have time to solve this, but not very much.
Time is running
Time's
out.
running
As
out.
they said
Yeah.
at the COP gathering
We
today,
need to get on it now. Yeah.
time is very much gathering out. Well, time has come to the end for us as well, unfortunately. Thank you very much to the people who have gathered here in the studio. Climate change, one of the things that matter most to you. My thanks indeed to Joni Farragher, to Mike Rose, to Graham Makepeace-Warne, and to Archie Elliott, my guests in the studio. Programme available as a video on Facebook, YouTube, and as a podcast on manxradio.com. Next week, care for the elderly. Take care of yourselves, won't you? I'm John Moss. May I wish you a very chill but a very good evening.
Manx Radio.